Think about this. Presidents have speechwriters, senators have communications teams, governors have press offices. Congresspeople have staffers whose entire job is to make sure nothing embarrassing comes out of their boss's mouth. And yet, from Senate chambers to cable news studios, from press conferences to hot mics, they absolutely should have known they were on. American politicians have said things that have stopped the country cold. Things that were offensive, delusional, scientifically incorrect, or just so dumb, it almost felt intentional. Today we're counting down the 25 most insane things US politicians have ever said. There's no presidents in this one, just senators, representatives, governors, and VP candidates. To keep things fair, no politician appears more than 3 times, and I promise a few of these will make you genuinely wonder how democracy functions. My name is Chris, and this is the Think Report. Number 25, Sarah Palin. In a 2008 CBS interview with Katie Couric, Palin was asked about her foreign policy exposure. Her answer: as Putin rears his head and comes into the airspace of the United States of America, where do they go? It's Alaska.
Consider even national security issues with Russia as Putin rears his head and comes into the airspace of the United States of America. Where do they go? It's Alaska. It's just right over the border. It is from Alaska that we send those out to make sure that an eye is being kept on this very powerful nation, Russia, because they are right there. They are right next to our state.
Yes, her argument was that Alaska's proximity to Russia constitutes foreign policy experience. Not meetings, not diplomacy, not briefings, geography. The clip became an instant cultural moment. Tina Fey built an entire career revival on it.
Lessons have you learned from Iraq, and how specifically would you spread democracy abroad?
Specifically, we would make every effort possible to spread democracy abroad to those who want it.
Yes, but specifically, what would you do?
We're gonna promote freedom, usher in democratic values and ideals, and fight terror-loving terrorists.
And for many Americans, it was the first time they genuinely asked, who is this person? And why on earth is she one heartbeat from the presidency? Number 24, Todd Akin. During a 2012 Senate race, Akin was asked about abortion in cases of rape. He replied, if it's a legitimate rape, the female body has ways to try to shut that whole thing down.
How do you slice this particularly tough sort of ethical question? It seems to me, first of all, from what I understand from doctors, that's really rare. If it's a legitimate rape, the female body has ways to try to shut that whole thing down. But let's assume that maybe that didn't work or something. You know, I think there should be some punishment, but the punishment ought to be on the rapist and not attacking the child.
Aside from legitimate rape seeming like just the king of oxymorons, there's no medical basis for this claim. None. Not a study, not a theory, nothing. Doctors, scientists, and women across the country responded with immediate and furious disbelief. The phrase legitimate rape alone caused a political earthquake. Akin lost the race, but the quote was already permanent. Number 23, Marion Barry. In 1990, Marion Barry, the mayor of the nation's capital, was caught on FBI surveillance video smoking crack cocaine in a hotel room.
This may be the most infamous case. Washington, D.C. Mayor Marion Barry busted on tape smoking cocaine. The public's appalled, and Barry goes to jail.
His response upon arrest? Bitch set me up. To be clear, he was the mayor of Washington, D.C. And his official response to being caught smoking crack on camera was to blame the woman in the room. He later ran for mayor again and won. Number 22, James Watt. In 1983, Interior Secretary James Watt was defending the makeup of a coal advisory panel to Congress. His description of how diverse it was: I have a black, a woman, 2 Jews, and a cripple, and we have talent. He wasn't caught on a hot mic, he said it, in Congress, to lawmakers, as a defense of his own team. Reagan accepted his resignation shortly after, but the sentence rattled off like a grocery list. It remains one of the most casually offensive things ever said inside a government building. Number 21, Dan Quayle. In a 1992 spelling bee, Vice President Dan Quayle corrected a student who had correctly spelled potato, P-O-T-A-T-O, by insisting it should be spelled P-O-T-A-T-O-E.
Spell that again. And add one little bit on the end. Just think of potato. How's it? You're right phonetically. What else? There you go.
He had a prompt card. The card was wrong. He went with the card anyways, over the child who was right. The student, by the way, looked back at Quayle with an expression that said everything a 12-year-old's face could possibly say. Number 20, Pat Robertson. After Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans in 2005, Robertson suggested on air that the city had brought it on itself because of its culture of sin. But earlier, and somehow worse, after the September 11 attacks, Robertson agreed with Jerry Falwell on live television that the attacks were partly the fault of the pagans and the abortionists and the feminists and the gays and the lesbians.
Throwing God out of the public square, out of the schools. The abortionists have got to bear some burden for this because God will not be mocked, and when we destroy 40 million little innocent babies, we make God mad. I really believe that the pagans and the abortionists and the feminists and the gays and the lesbians who are actively trying to make that an alternative lifestyle, the ACLU, People for the American Way, all of them who tried to secularize America, I point the thing in their face and say, you helped this happen.
Well, I totally concur.
2 of the deadliest moments in American history blamed on gay people in women's clinics on national television the day after it happened. Number 19, Gary Hart. In 1987, Senator Gary Hart was the frontrunner for the Democratic presidential nomination. When rumors of infidelity surfaced, Hart responded by essentially daring the press to follow him. Follow me around. I don't care. I'm serious. If anybody wants to put a tail on me, go ahead. Reporters from the Miami Herald took him up on it. They found a woman named Donna Rice. A photo of Hart on a boat called The Monkey Business followed. His campaign was over within weeks, possibly the single most self-destructive bluff in political history. Number 18, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. In 2019, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez explained how government works in an interview with Roll Call. There are 3 chambers of Congress. There's the House, the Senate, and the President.
And if we work our butts off to make sure that we take back all 3 chambers of Congress, all 3 chambers of government, the presidency, the Senate, and the House in 2020, we can't start working in 2020.
Of course, that's not true at all. I'm pretty sure every American child learns this in elementary school. Many Canadians learn this in elementary school. There are 3 branches of government. There's the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. And then there's the 4th estate, which is us, the media. AOC had a degree in economics and international relations from the Boston University. She was elected to make laws for 330 million Americans. She thought the president was part of Congress. Number 17, Rod Blagojevich. When FBI wiretaps captured Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich discussing the sale of Barack Obama's vacant Senate seat, the world got this gem. I've got this thing, it's effing golden. I'm not just giving it up for effing nothing.
So they criminalized Barack Obama trying to force his pick for Senate seat and you accepting it.
Obama wasn't trying to force it. He was trying to make a deal to persuade me to do it.
Or what would you get out of that?
That's what we discussed for 6 weeks, and the FBI was talking about that. And we discussed all kinds of crazy ideas, a lot of good ideas. Spent 2 days talking about the possibility of appointing Oprah Winfrey.
What?
So we spent 6 weeks talking about all kinds of ideas, because this was, to quote me, fucking golden.
This thing was a U.S. Senate seat, a Senate in the world's most powerful legislative body. He was pricing it like it was a used car. He was impeached, convicted, and sentenced to 14 years in federal prison. President Trump later communes the sentence, but the quote will live forever in this video. Number 16, John Edwards. In 2008, while his wife Elizabeth was battling cancer, John Edwards was caught by the National Enquirer visiting his mistress, Rielle Hunter, who had also just had his child, in a Beverly Hills hotel at 2 a.m. When ABC News confronted him, Edwards admitted the affair but flatly denied fathering the child. I know that it's not possible that this child could be mine. Edwards was indicted on campaign finance charges. He was acquitted, but the legacy is sealed. A man who looked into the camera and lied about his own daughter while his wife had cancer.
Former Democratic presidential candidate John Edwards is finally coming clean, admitting he fathered a child with a videographer he hired during his campaign. Edwards says in a statement to the Associated Press, "It was wrong for me ever to deny she was my daughter, and hopefully one day, when she understands, she'll forgive me." Word of the affair with Rielle Hunter came well after Edwards had abandoned his White House bid in 2008. Still, it shocked and angered many, including his wife Elizabeth, who had recently been diagnosed with cancer.
Number 15, Anthony Weiner. In 2011, Congressman Anthony Weiner accidentally tweeted an explicit photo to his entire public Twitter following, rather than send it as a direct message. When confronted, he held a press conference and claimed his account had been hacked. Classic. He insisted with visible discomfort that he could not say with certitude whether the photo was of him. It was of him. He admitted it days later. He resigned, then ran for mayor, then got caught again, then was convicted of sending explicit messages to a minor. The press conference where he couldn't confirm his own body may be the most painful political moment of the social media era. Number 14, Joe Biden. In 2006, Senator Joe Biden was on C-SPAN's Road to the White House series, shaking hands with an Indian American supporter and talking up his relationship with the Indian American community in Delaware. What came out was this: you cannot go to a 7-Eleven or a Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent. I'm not joking. And he was not joking. He said it to an Indian American man on camera while trying to pay the community a compliment.
Manish, how are you, man? Well, good to see you. As you know, I got a lot of support from you, Cindy. That's where, and more to come, I think. Yeah, so, no, I've had a great relationship. In Delaware, the largest growth in population is Indian Americans moving from India. You cannot go to a 7-Eleven or a Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent. I'm not joking. Oh, gigantic.
Biden's team later explained he was celebrating Indian American success and social mobility. The Indian American man he said it to did not appear to celebrate along with him. Number 13, Hank Johnson. In 2010, Congressman Hank Johnson was questioning a Navy admiral during a congressional hearing about the proposed expansion of a military base on the island of Guam. His concern? My fear is that the whole island will become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize. He was worried that the island would tip over. He was worried that the island would tip over, capsize. The admiral's face attempted to remain neutral. It did not fully succeed.
On the island and about 12 miles wide, on the widest part of the island, and I don't know how many square miles that is. Do you happen to know?
I don't have that figure with me, sir. I can certainly supply it to you if you'd like.
Yeah, my fear is that the whole island will become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize.
We don't anticipate that.
Number 12, David Duke. David Duke, former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, was elected to the Louisiana State Legislature in 1989.
David Duke has been trying to shed his image as a cross-burning Klansman for almost 10 years now. He's still having difficulty doing that with a lot of people.
This is not the issue of this campaign. It's not a Jewish, Christian issue or controversy. It's not a black-white controversy. I'm an individual standing up for equal rights for everybody.
During his subsequent runs for Senate and governor, he said openly on camera, the civil rights laws were not passed to help America. They were passed to satisfy the savage beast, to keep down the mobs. He nearly won the governorship of Louisiana in 1991, losing in a runoff with 39% of the vote. Number 11, George Allen. In 2006, Senator George Allen was campaigning for re-election when he spotted a young man of Indian descent in the crowd. A tracker sent by his opponent's campaign. Allen pointed at him in front of the cameras and called him a racial slur, one commonly used in parts of Francophone Africa and Europe, which I'm not going to repeat.
This fella here over here with the yellow shirt, Macaca, or whatever his name is, he's with my opponent. And let's give a welcome to Macaca here. Welcome to America and the real world of Virginia.
Then added, he's following us around everywhere. He said it with a smile to the man's face on camera. Allen later claimed he had no idea the word was a slur, and that he simply made it up. Researchers and linguists disagreed. Allen's own mother was from Tunisia. The tracker posted the video online. It went viral. Allen, who had been considered a frontrunner for the 2008 Republican presidential nomination, lost his Senate seat weeks later. One word, one moment, career over. Number 10, Christine O'Donnell. In a 2010 Senate debate, Christine O'Donnell, who had already become famous for a TV ad in which she declared, "I am not a witch," asked her opponent a question about the First Amendment. Where in the Constitution is the separation of church and state? When her opponent and the audience laughed, she doubled down and asked them what was so funny.
Indispensable principles is the separation of church and state.
Okay, with that, very good dialogue. We appreciate that. Let's still move on so we can get to all the panelists and cover a number of areas. Chad Lyon, good from the newsroom, please, if you could ask that question, please.
Where in the Constitution is separation of church and state?
Let's have some respect for the panelists and the questions they brought in.
The separation of church and state is a foundational principle of the First Amendment. It was not a trick question. She genuinely didn't know. Number 9, Larry Craig. In 2007, Senator Larry Craig, a vocal opponent of gay rights legislation throughout his career, was arrested in a Minneapolis airport for allegedly soliciting sex from an undercover male police officer. At a press conference, he addressed the nation. "I am not gay. I have never been gay."
I want to put my state of mind into context on June 11th. For 8 months leading up to June 11th, my family and I have been relentlessly and viciously harassed by the Idaho Statesman. If you saw the article today, you know why. Let me be clear. I am not gay. I never have been gay.
He had pled guilty to disorderly conduct. He then tried to withdraw the plea. He failed. He announced he would resign, then didn't resign. The combination of the bathroom arrest, the guilty plea, the denial, the unresignation, and a career built on opposing gay rights made this one of the most spectacular political implosions of the 2000s. Number 8, Marion Barry. After his conviction and release from prison, Barry ran for and won a seat on the DC City Council. During a speech in a predominantly Asian neighborhood, he said, "We got to do something about these Asians coming in and opening up businesses and dirty shops. They ought to go."
We got to do something about these Asians coming in, opening up business, these dirty shops, and getting rid. And they ought to go. I just say that right now, But we need African American business people to be able to take their places too. We're going to work on that too. We're going to take.
He was an elected official, speaking publicly, in the neighborhood he was describing. The backlash was immediate. Barry apologized reluctantly and continued to hold office. Number 7, Strom Thurmond. In 1948, Strom Thurmond ran for president on a platform of racial segregation. At a campaign rally that year, he told the crowd, "There's not enough troops in the army to force the Southern people to break down segregation and admit the N-word, race, into our theaters, our swimming pools, and into our homes and our churches."
There's not enough troops in the army to force the Southern people to break down segregation and admit the Negro race into our theaters, into our swimming pools, into our homes, and into our churches.
He didn't just say it, he backed it up. When the Civil Rights Act came to the Senate floor in 1957, Thurmond filibustered it, alone, standing at the podium for 24 hours and 18 minutes straight. The longest solo filibuster in Senate history. He dehydrated himself in a steam room beforehand so he wouldn't need a bathroom break. He served in the US Senate until he was 100 years old. Number 6, Maxine Waters. In 2018, during a period of intense political tension over immigration policy, Congresswoman Maxine Waters told a crowd, "If you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd and you push back on them. Tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere."
If you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome.
Whatever side of the political aisle you're on, create a crowd and push back on them, anywhere. It's quite a remarkable thing for a sitting member of Congress to say publicly into a microphone. Republican leaders called it a call to violence. Democrats distanced themselves. Waters did not back down. Number 5, Clayton Williams. In 1990, Clayton Williams was the heavily favored Republican candidate for the governor of Texas. At a campaign event with reporters and supporters present, Williams made a joke comparing bad weather to rape. "If it's inevitable, just relax and enjoy it," he said out loud at a campaign event in front of journalists while running for governor.
On rape, it's like the weather. If it's inevitable, relax and enjoy it.
His opponent, Ann Richards, had been trailing badly in the polls. After the quote, Richards won the election by a comfortable margin. Williams later refused to shake Richards' hand at a public event, a man who compared rape to bad weather, and then couldn't manage basic manners when he lost. Texas had seen enough. Number 4, Theodore Bilbo. In a 1946 Senate speech, as Black Americans were registering to vote across the South after World War II, Bilbo addressed them directly. "I call on every red-blooded white man to use any means to keep the N-word away from the polls." From the Senate floor into the congressional record, he was calling for voter suppression by any means necessary against Americans who had just fought a world war for their country. The Senate investigated him. He died before they could act, but the speech is in the record, permanently, exactly as he said it. Number 3, John Rarick. Congressman John Rarick, on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives, once said of Martin Luther King Jr., shortly after King's assassination, "He was an instrument of the Communist Party and a man who spread discord throughout the land." At this point, King had just been murdered. Rarick used his congressional platform to slander a man who had just been shot dead for fighting for basic civil rights. Rarick later joined the American Independent Party and ran for president. He never apologized. The speech remains in the congressional record exactly as delivered. Number 2, Robert Byrd. Robert Byrd was the longest-serving senator in the U.S. A former member of the Ku Klux Klan, he had once recruited over 150 members to a local chapter. Byrd had long claimed he'd put those views behind him. Then in 2001, during a live interview on Fox News, he said this: "There are white N-words. I've seen a lot of white N-words in my time. I'm going to use that word."
You can't go to heaven if you hate anybody. If we practice that, there are white niggers. I've seen a lot of white niggers in my time. I'm going to use that word. But we just need to work together to make our country better. And I just soon quit talking about it.
It was 2001. He was on national television. He was a sitting United States senator. He served another 9 years after that. Number 1 on our list, Ted Kennedy. On the night of July 18th, 1969, the same weekend Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, Senator Ted Kennedy drove his car off a bridge on Chappaquiddick Island in Massachusetts. His passenger, 28-year-old Mary Jo Kopechny, was trapped inside.
At midnight last Friday, Senator Edward M. Kennedy drove a car off a narrow bridge and into a pond on Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts. A young woman in the car with him was drowned. Kennedy survived but failed to report the accident until 10 hours later. Today, police moved to prosecute the senator on a charge of leaving the scene of an accident after causing bodily harm. ABC's Mal Good reports from Edgartown, Massachusetts.
Kennedy escaped. Kopechny did not. He did not call the police. He did not call for help. He walked back to his hotel, went to sleep, and only reported the accident the next morning, after her body in his car had already been discovered by someone else. 7 days later, he gave a nationally televised speech, and here's what he said: "I felt that somehow I might have been insulated from the grief of a sensible person. I wondered whether some awful curse actually did hang over all the Kennedys, whether somehow the awful weight of this incredible incident might in some way pass from my shoulders."
All kinds of scrambled thoughts, all of them confused, some of them irrational, many of them which I cannot recall, and some of which I would not have seriously entertained under normal circumstances went through my mind during this period. They were reflected in the various, inexplicable, inconsistent, and inconclusive things I said and did, including such questions as whether the girl might still be alive somewhere out of that immediate area, whether some awful curse did actually hang over all the Kennedys.
A woman was dead, and his televised speech was about whether the Kennedy family was cursed, about whether he could be relieved of his burden. He then closed by asking Massachusetts voters to think through this with me and decide if he should resign. They thought it through. He kept his seat. Ted Kennedy served in the United States Senate for another 40 years. History recorded every word. Politicians are supposed to be professionals, career communicators, people who have spent their entire lives learning to say exactly what they mean and mean exactly what they say. But every once in a while, the prep collapses. The filter drops, the camera catches something they didn't plan to give away. And what you're left with is something raw, something real, a window into what the person actually thinks or doesn't think. From Todd Akin's biology lesson to Robert Byrd on live television in 2001. From James Watt describing his own staff like a novelty act to Ted Kennedy going to sleep while a woman drowned in his car. These aren't just gaffes, they're moments. Moments that shaped elections, ended careers, and in some cases, changed the country. Think about that.